Stop looking at the grainy black and white photos from the 1930s. Ignore the plastic toys sold in the gift shops of Inverness. The search for the truth in Loch Ness has been looking in the wrong direction for decades. Humans are obsessed with the surface, scanning the ripples for a neck or a hump. But the secret of this place is not about what is swimming in the water. It is about the water itself and where it goes when the lights go out. The loch is not a bowl. It is a crack in the skull of the planet. Scotland is old. The rocks here have seen continents collide and tear apart. The Great Glen Fault, the massive tier that houses Loch Ness, runs straight through the highlands like a scar from a knife fight. It cuts from the Atlantic coast all the way to the North Sea. Geologically speaking, this is a violent place. The loch is incredibly deep, deeper than the North Sea in some parts. The bottom is a thick, choking layer of silt and peat, black as oil. But it is the walls that matter. The walls are not solid concrete. They are fractured, twisted layers of rock, riddled with faults and fissures. The theory of the enclosed ecosystem is the biggest flaw in the monster hunt. Critics say a population of giant predators couldn't survive in a closed lake. There isn't enough food. There isn't enough biomass. And they are right. If the loch were a sealed fish tank, a family of 40-foot reptiles would starve in a month. But what if the tank has a door? What if the loch is just a train station, a temporary stop on a much longer journey? Imagine the underwater topography. Sonar scans have always struggled here. The steep walls bounce signals like a chaotic echo chamber. The peat in the water absorbs sound. It is the perfect stealth environment. But anomalies appear on the charts. Massive openings near the bottom, hundreds of feet down. These aren't just caves. They are potential transit tunnels. The hollow earth theory is nonsense, but the hollow highlands theory has geological teeth. Limestone and sandstone erode. Water finds a way. Over millions of years, the pressure of the water could carve out a subterranean highway system, linking the fresh water of the loch to the salt water of the sea. The North Sea is rough. It is cold, stormy, and full of competition. For a creature like a plesiosaur remnant of the Cretaceous period, the open ocean is a battlefield. But the loch? The loch is a nursery, a sanctuary. It is quiet. The water is still. If a species survived the extinction event 65 million years ago, it didn't do so by being bold. It survived by being elusive. It survived by finding the back roads. The creature itself is a biological marvel. Picture a body built for stealth, not speed. 4 powerful flippers act like hydrofoils. It doesn't swim like a fish. It flies through the water like a bird. The neck is long, not for looking out of the water, but for reaching into crevices, for snatching prey in the dark without moving the massive body. The skin is thick, rubbery, and mottled with dark grays and greens to blend into the peat-stained gloom. This animal is not a resident. It is a commuter. When the salmon run, the food source in the loch explodes. Massive schools of fish migrate from the ocean into the fresh water to spawn. It is an all-you-can-eat buffet, and following the buffet comes the diner. The creature enters through the subterranean tunnels, navigating by magnetic sense and memory. It squeezes through the dark, water-filled arteries of the earth, emerging into the deep basin of Loch Ness. This explains the sightings. It explains why the monster is seen for a few weeks and then vanishes for years. It isn't hiding in the mud. It literally isn't there. It has gone back to sea. It explains the sonar contacts that track a massive object moving deep and fast, only for the signal to disappear into the rock wall. The operators think their equipment failed. In reality, the target just entered the tunnel. The physics of the tunnel system would be treacherous. The pressure changes between the sea depth and the loch depth would be immense. But nature adapts. Some sharks can move between salt and fresh water. Bull sharks do it today. A prehistoric reptile, a master of survival, could have evolved the osmoregulation capability to handle the switch. The journey through the rock would be terrifying. Pitch black, the current ripping through the narrow gaps. The creature would have to pull itself along the walls with those powerful flippers, scraping against the ancient stone, holding its breath for an hour or more. Let's look at the surgeon's photo era again, but with a new lens. The 1930s saw an explosion of sightings. Why? Was it mass hysteria? Or was it because of the blasting? The road along the loch was being expanded. Dynamite was used to blow apart the rock. The vibrations traveled through the ground, into the water, and into the tunnels. If you are a giant reptile sleeping in a sea cave, and someone starts setting off bombs upstairs, you move. The construction work might have flushed them out, forcing them to the surface, confused and agitated. Modern science relies on eDNA testing the water for genetic material. They found plenty of eel DNA. Some say the monster is just a giant eel. But eDNA has a flaw. It only catches what is currently there. If the creature is migratory, if it spends 11 months at sea and only 1 month in the loch, and the samples are taken in the off-season, the result is negative. The timing is everything. The science is right, but the schedule is wrong. The depths of the loch are colder than a grave. At 700 feet down, the temperature is barely above freezing. Reptiles need heat. This is the other main argument against the monster. But the leatherback turtle swims in freezing waters. It generates its own body heat through a process called gigantothermy. A massive body loses heat slowly. The plesiosaur could be warm-blooded, or at least functionally warm-blooded. It could generate heat through the sheer muscle mass required to move that bulk. The cold of the loch acts as a refrigerator, preserving the energy, slowing the metabolism down when it needs to rest. A narrative shifts to the perspective of the sonar beam. The technology pings out a sound wave. It travels through the murky water, past the floating logs, past the schools of char and trout. It hits something hard, something that isn't rock. The return signal shows a shape, an oval body, a long projection. The operator on the boat above stares at the screen. The heart rate spikes. The object is hovering at 500 feet. Then it dives. It doesn't just sink. It powers down. The speed is 40 knots. Impossible for a fish. It heads straight for the underwater cliff face near Urquhart Castle. Geologists have mapped faults right under that castle. It is a structural weak point. The creature knows this. It dives into the shadow of the cliff. The sonar beam loses it. The screen goes blank. The operator marks it as a school of fish, because writing prehistoric beast entered a cave will lose them their funding. But the data remains. The anomaly is recorded on a hard drive, gathering dust in a university basement. The connection to the sea changes the stakes. If the tunnels exist, then the loch is not isolated. It is part of the global ocean system. It implies that these creatures are out there, in the Atlantic, in the North Sea. They are not rare. They are just good at avoiding us. The ocean is vast. A creature that surfaces only to breathe and has a low profile can vanish in a 3-foot swell. We miss shipping containers floating in the ocean. We can certainly miss a biological submarine that the local legends speak of water horses that drag men to their deaths. Folklore is often just misunderstood history. A predator that snatches prey from the shoreline. A predator that drags its kill underwater to a larder. The tunnel theory fits this too. If the creature kills something big, it takes it to the cave. It wedges the prey into the rocks to rot, to soften up. The tunnels are not just highways. They are PANTRIE sat The weather over the loch adds to the mystery. The mist rolls in fast, obscuring the water. The waves can get surprisingly high, whipped up by the wind funneling through the great glen. In this chaos, visibility is zero. A head poking out of the water looks like a wave. A hump looks like a boat wake. The creature uses the weather. It surfaces when the chop is high, when the camouflage is perfect. It is an evolutionary adaptation to a world dominated by visual predators like humans. There is a specific spot in the loch, known as the Horseshoe Scree. It is a massive slide of rocks tumbling into the depths. This unstable geology suggests movement. The rocks shift because the earth below is hollow. The water flows through the gaps. If one were to drop a specialized dye marker here, heavy enough to sink, where would it end up? Would it appear days later on the coast of Inverness? Or on the Isle of Skye? The experiment has never been done properly. The focus is always on cameras, never on the plumbing. The idea of a breeding ground is compelling. The open ocean is full of orcas and great whites. A baby plesiosaur would be a snack. But Loch Ness? It has no natural predators for a creature of that size. The tunnels allow the mothers to come in, give birth in the safety of the dark, peat-stained water, and raise the young until they are big enough to face the ocean. The monster sightings of smaller creatures, the baby monsters, support this. The loch is a nursery. The silence of the loch is heavy. Standing on the shore, the water looks black and impenetrable. It feels like it is hiding something. Not a magical beast, but a biological reality. The wind rustles the heather. The water laps against the stones.